Hello and welcome to another edition of Pricing College with your hosts Aidan Campbell
and Joanna Wells.
In today's episode, we want to explore the world of startups. And I suppose at Taylor Wells, we got approached by quite a few startup businesses at early stages of development with questions about pricing and pricing strategy and how startups should price. And I suppose we just really want to explore some of those ideas today and maybe just discuss some ideas.
Yeah, especially quite recently, we've had a number of questions and inquiries from startups, and we're talking about startups, people that are literally coming up with new ideas, business ideas, and often it's the first time that they've done that, and they're trying to launch either a new product. Now, this could be ranging from, an FMCG good product, or, even a SaaS type product. And, they come with legitimate concerns. Often they've heard the podcast and they thought, do you know what? I never really considered any other approach to pricing other than thinking about costs and putting a markup on cost to give me that margin that I need to cover my costs and get revenue in through the door. And I never really thought about value-based pricing, but it really did change my viewpoint, not just on the price point, but also it gave me a new perspective on what I'm trying to do in the market, my business model, how I'm going to generate revenue, what the sources of value are that are going to help me do that and cover my costs, how I'm going to work with suppliers, who my target customers are. All these new and very important ideas came almost flooding in people's heads after thinking about value-based pricing. And we're just going to explore today, a little bit more about pricing for startups and a few techniques just to help people make those first few steps, because it doesn't have to be a difficult journey or a long drawn-out journey. You can start pricing immediately, even though sometimes you think, God, I've got so much else to do. I'm just going to have to get money through the door type of approach. So,
clearly, we're not going to go into cost plus pricing on this podcast, but clearly for a startup, it's even more exacerbated. If you make one item, your cost base is going to be higher than if you make 1,000. So, as you grow and scale, do you intend to reduce prices? So that makes no sense. But clearly, a startup, you have a number of issues that will make pricing more difficult. There is no right price for your product. At the beginning, you don't know what the value provides to your customers. You might have an idea. You might have, obviously you've got your pitch deck and you've got your ballpark figure and your ideas that your elevator pitch, let's say, and you've thought about why you're getting into the business and where you've seen the niche. But realistically, what's that old saying? Everyone's got a plan until they're punched on the nose, I think Mike Tyson said. And, until you get out there and meet customers and really get into the market, you don't really know. You look at statistics, how many companies, how many startups pivot, how many fail, how many really hit a niche and really, make money. It's limited. Obviously, we don't want to put people off from starting up, but, those things have to be borne in mind. And when you're looking at pricing, that is the issue. They are... you don't have enough information at the beginning. There's an old saying that, trying to get some customers, trying to get out there, win some customers. Realistically, I don't think the price at the beginning, we'll get into this a bit later, but just winning customers is very important, because then you can explore value. It's a value discovery process. Almost look at it as a subsidized value discovery process, where a customer is almost paying you. It may be too much, it may be too little, but hopefully they're paying you, and then you can explore and learn about your own business. So that's the first thing I'd say. Clearly, it's very important to get customers on board. Second thing I'd say, unless, before I move back to Joanna, unless you have funding, and we're talking, Series A or large amounts of funding, it's highly unlikely you have a pricing manager. let's be honest, most startups at the beginning have very limited revenue. A good pricing manager's salary probably will be quite expensive, so you're going to be doing it ad hoc. You'll be doing it in-house. Probably the startup, the founder will be doing the pricing. And so, how much attention you can really give to pricing at the beginning is limited.
I'd sort of disagree with the point that, people often come into business with a really good plan. In my experience, even consulting with major corporates, medium-sized businesses, even, blue chip companies, often the surprising point is they don't even have a plan when it comes to pricing or even their business strategy. What they've actually got is a very flimsy outline of what they kind of want to do. Often the key question of, why are we selling this product? How do our customers value this product? How do they perceive and value us? What's our importance in the eyes of our customers? How good are we at delivering what customers value? Are things that are not addressed in, I would say, 98% of business strategies, even though that's the most important questions you could be asking. So I would say, most startups don't have a plan either, to be fair. And really there's a little bit of a hope and a prayer that this product, this new business, is going to solve a gap in the market without actually, as Aidan said, approaching customers and seeing, giving it that, testing out assumptions, testing out, let's call it, a hypothesis about what we think we've got and how valuable that is in the eyes of our customers. Because essentially, if you're going to get investment from private equity, seed investors, they'll be asking that. I mean, because it's the central aspect of a business, a new business model, an operation system, or it should be. And if you haven't got clear answers on that, you're not going to get the funding. And that brings me back to what I was saying before. A lot of startups have come to us and they've got a lot, even with you talking about value-based pricing, it made us think about value. And it made us think that there was that major gap in our business thinking and our strategy, which has in turn delayed other things, not just pricing, but even, how we go and approach our customers, our pitch. What do we say to them? What is that compelling message? All of these things, were sort of underbaked and then have been preventing, people from launching. So, no, like Aidan was saying, let's go back to basics. Let's ask and turn these questions into hypotheses and start going back and thinking about who our target market is. Can we think about the personas of these customers that would want to buy the products we're trying to sell? How are we going to communicate that offer to them? How are we going to make it easy for them to buy from us? Now, these are the questions. You're not going to have the answers. And don't fear not having all of the answers when you approach your customers. The key here is to have some hypotheses in mind about what you're doing, what the value of the offer is, right? When you go into speak with a customer. But then ask the questions and then listen. Listen very, very carefully to what they're saying to you. What you will find are that some customers that you're talking to are really not your target market, even though you thought they were. Whereas other people really are, potentially changing your viewpoint on your initial business model and plan, and then iterating from there. This is the fundamental aspects of value-based pricing. And as Aidan mentioned, we call it a value discovery process. But really, it's essential. It's an activity that leads to profitable revenue growth. And it's one that's often ignored and skipped, but it's the central aspect of any pricing model and of any business strategy.
I suppose, let's be honest, at the beginning, anyone who's ever started a business, every single interaction with a customer feels like life and death. You stress about them, you dig into it too much, Are those interactions statistically valid? Is it over time when you scale that business? Will that apply across a larger number of customers? Those questions have to be decided. I suppose at the beginning, you have to have a ballpark figure as to what value you're providing. Are you aiming to be cheapest in the market and undercut traditional operators because of your cost of operation? Is that your model? If that is the case, likely then you probably will be cheaper if you're cutting costs. If your value add is that you're cutting costs. If your value add is that you're offering way more features and benefits, then you probably can charge more than other people. Big question, should you be going into the SaaS situation? So many startups, online businesses, to try to get onto a subscription. There's a huge movement towards recurring revenue, showing recurring revenue. You have to really think, does that suit your business? Is that really this type of business that you want to be operating? It gives investors confidence, but is it actually plausible into what you're doing? So that also has to be considered. I suppose fundamentally you have to really dig into what does your business do and what is the best way to charge for it, and just pick the best that you can think of at the beginning. Over time, of course, you can optimize. You can go into it once you get more professionalized. Once one customer becomes 10, becomes 100, and hopefully becomes in the thousands. Then over time, you can start to optimize, potentially bring in pricing expertise, pricing analysts over time, and optimize that stuff. But you really got to think about what. I suppose companies will go through different strategies at different periods of their life cycle and development. At the beginning, are you trying to grow market share? Are you trying to get some sort of like if it's got network effects, I'm assuming that you'd be wanting to try and grow the business. And potentially to try and grow it, you might be offering freemiums, or you might be offering lower quality, taster versions of that. So that again all has to be considered, but you have to be, I suppose you putting the old saying, a cart before the horse. What are you actually trying to sell? That's the fundamental thing. Pricing is not, it doesn't sit separate. It is your commercial strategy. And the point I'm trying to make is, what is your business trying to do? In an ideal world, let's say, obviously you'll not do everything perfectly, but it's trying to do something. And then once it's doing that, and a customer is, bought into that and wants that service or product or whatever it is, what's the best way to charge that customer for that whilst achieving your objectives of growing, of keeping solvent until your next funding round? That is the question.
I mean, you make a good point there. Is a value discovery for one or two customers statistically valid? Obviously not. It wouldn't be. But it gives you a starting point. And I think it's an important point to note here that a value discovery is ongoing. It never stops. You've constantly got to do it. So it's important that you don't lose track of the data that you and the insights that you learn from different customers as you approach them in terms of understanding value. So actually, in a way, it's a very scientific approach to understanding value, and it has to be set up as such for it to be meaningful in a statistical way and to give you insights that inform your strategy over time. In regards to when I was listening to Aidan there, I agree. There is certainly an evolution of pricing methodology that startups and even big businesses go through, starting with the rudimentary cost plus, knowing your cost and adding a simplistic markup, going through that competitive benchmarking scenario when you line up all your competitors' prices, and then you go, I think I'm going to be somewhere around here. So you go, you pick lowest, highest, and you go, all right, I'm going to be here in this price bandwidth. That's what they call it. All right, I'm not going to evaluate these methodologies. We'll do that later on. And if you listen to other podcasts, you probably have heard us evaluate them. I'll just talk about the evolution. And then I think Aidan was going on about SaaS businesses there, using subscription models. Now, that's a revenue model, but the pricing methodology that tends to be adopted within that revenue model is called attribute-based pricing, where they do look at the features and benefits of the product or plan. And then they set their different price tiers, good, better, best, essentially, or decoy pricing, based on those features and benefits. Evolution from there, obviously got dynamic pricing, looking at, inventory and capacity utilization and demand and forecasting and things like that. And then in terms of evolutions of the subscription model, they go into like consumption based pricing, where basically you charge customers for how much they use different plans. That's becoming particularly popular at the moment. And then from there, a more sophisticated one is based on outcomes based pricing, that basically what a customer gets from using your service, your plan, your product. Now that's not that's a newer one, and all of these, as Aidan says, it's not like, oh, that sounds good, I think we'll just use that. Even though 90% of SaaS businesses do that, they just go with trends. You have to be very careful which one you choose, because each have their limitations. And it takes a hell of a lot of time and effort to integrate them successfully within the business model. And if they're out of sync with the market and the business model, they're not going to generate you profitable revenue growth. And in turn, you're actually going to lose probably more money than you make, and over time. So you've got to be, and this is why, Aidan was talking about pricing expertise. It's quite important to get that pricing expertise on board. But obviously, as a startup, you've got to be aware of the strengths and weaknesses of these different pricing methodology. And what we're trying to say is the best way of doing that is understanding your business model, thinking very closely on how it connects with the market, and then thinking about, how you're going to capitalize on the value that you're offering based on the perceptions of the market, your customers, and how they perceive and use that value. What do they get from working with you? In a very simplistic way, from buying your product, working with you, how do they perceive value, and what value do they actually generate in terms of, do you help them lower cost? Do you help them generate more revenue from using your plan, your products, whatever? Are you mitigating some risk in a way for them? Those sort of questions will really give you a head start when it comes to evaluating the best pricing model for your business.
Look, I think everyone, when you're starting a business, clearly you have to be a jack of all trades. You want to know a little bit about everything. But the thing about pricing is people come and they go, oh, tell me a pricing strategy. And we hear that a lot. The reality of it is, there's no right or wrong pricing strategy. There are many potential strategies you could implement. Some may be better than others, clearly. Obviously, how you implement them, there's some science behind that. There's approaches. But, you could implement, for many businesses, you could implement various strategies, particularly when they're very early stage, when they haven't proven anything. You could tweak certain things, and the trajectory that business will go in are very different. So you could pick different ones at the beginning. Clearly, they have to, because they're not tested by the market, they haven't got many users, you haven't got feedback. Clearly, some are more likely to be successful than others, and there's an art to picking that one. The actual pricing strategy, the commercial strategy you use. Clearly, a lot depends on so many moving parts. Your funding. Do you have funding, or do you have to actually make profits from day one and grow, bootstrapped? You look at MailChimp, I think, never took on funding and grew pretty much organically by being profitable and then adding additional features over time, but not, jumping massively, just growing gradually. Canva, probably the most famous Australian unicorn, fundamentally they grew at the beginning by giving free service to huge numbers of people. I don't know what percentage of people who use that platform actually pay for it. I read, I think it was in the papers this week, that it seems implausible, but apparently it's true. Every month, over 1% of the world's adult population uses Canva, which does seem unbelievable, but apparently those are statistics. So clearly they're not all paying for the service, but a significant proportion are. So, you're thinking, clearly they had funding, and a lot of these startups are clearly loss-making for many years. You're thinking Amazon, you're thinking Uber. They're clearly loss-making for a very long period of time until, the investors are confident that market share, scale, efficiencies, economies of scale, all that stuff will factor in later. So those questions have to be asked. And if your business needs scale to operate, to be profitable in 3 years' time, then clearly you need to grow that scale, and potentially it could be, using pricing strategies such as, skimming, or being even a loss leader, or, going in cheap and then over time adding additional services and, upselling. So it really, the answer is it really depends, but it all stems back to the beginning, to having a clear view as to what your business does having a rough idea as to what potential value it has and the longer term business model. Focus on the business model, and once you have that and confidence and backing and your team are behind that business model, then you start charging for it and working out, putting in place a model that can keep your business solvent long enough until that's achieved, and B, making as much profit as possible along the way. I think that's my comments today.
Yeah, I like that. Don't be afraid to try new pricing methodology and revenue models. You've started your business now with a great proposition. You went with you're already going in with an experimental sort of mindset. You're keen to learn. So just do the same thing with your pricing. I actually say, even in big businesses, it's much better to learn quickly, fail quickly. It's okay if you make mistakes as long as you learn from them. Same applies with startups. You just learn and do exactly what you do when you're passionate with your own product. When it's the same mindset applies. So keep doing that. And I hope, along the way, we've given you some, an overview of all the different types of approaches that you can take, that value-based approach mixed in with more of the technical sort of methodology that potentially is out there for you to utilize as you experiment and learn. And key to all of this, if you've got a number of different products and plans, often that means there would be different types of pricing approaches and models. You don't always use the same type of approach for everything. That's sort of like when markets are more stable. So having that creativity and thinking at a very granular level when you have time about different products, because every product has a different type of price sensitivity and different value profile. So you'll find over time that different plans will require a different approach. But you'll learn this if you just keep on learning and testing and trialing, but do so you don't lose that data, you don't lose all that learning. You apply it, feed it back, and you continue to update and learn and test and tweak. That really is pricing, like it is with product development. It's the same type of thing and same approach. So yeah, I think overall I'll leave it there, but feel free to ask any more questions. I've had some great feedback from you guys recently, so keen to hear more. Okay, well, thank you for listening.
Thanks.